Hey, good, how are you?
Kevin, Pat Coleman.
Hey, Pat.
Hi, Pat Coleman, nice to meet you, Stacy.
I'm Tracey, Garcher, I'm the Director of Human Services.
Kevin King.
Tracey Garcher.
Nice to meet you.
Where are you sitting over there?
Hey, good. You want to give them?
Yeah. Do you guys need a copy? Or do you have your own?
Do we have, well, I guess what we're looking for is an original and then the fixed copy, which we still haven't been able to get the
Original.
original.
Yeah, and I believe that's was been requested from Nina at the county attorney's
Well, we got a
office.
response back and they aren't the custodian of that since it's a state system. When it first got closed, then that cash version of that was with the state.
Yeah.
So we have to go through that place unless we're told today what was changed and why it was changed, I guess, is really one of the.
And I guess I just wanted to start out saying, you know, I kind of come into this a little bit late. Obviously, Kelly Starrett was involved from the county attorney's office at your last meeting, but I think for today's purposes, we want to focus on the report, go through and determine if there are areas where you disagree or think additional information needs to be provided to provide an accurate report. And you know, I think we'll take notes to the extent that it is something that you know, if it's a he said, she said type of situation, we're gonna note your comments, but that won't result necessarily in a change to the report. But it will also include your comments as well. If there are instances where it appears that the information is clearly wrong in the report, I think Mr. Kellerby will make notations and proceed to reopen and correct the report. We do want to stay focused on the report. We're getting into a discussion about overall department policies and you know, what we can do better in the future. We're just gonna, you know, go through this report to the extent that, you know, you all believe that there need to be changes in department policies and procedures. You know, certainly I encourage you to make Mr. Garcher aware of those, or the Board of Health, who he reports to in that regard, and you know, let them know what.
Who's the Board of Health?
And that's the county commissioners.
Okay.
It's actually
Not the Board of Health, Board of Human Services, excuse me. But it's the county commissioners. So you know, if you
Well,
have
I think just from my standpoint, I mean, she can speak on the fact of some of the reports, but I think in the last meeting it was to come here was to discuss about relevant changes to how this particular case was handled. So I think that's going to kind of easily run into some of the other issues specific to this complaint, since we're trying to talk about reform and how so that this doesn't happen to another family. So I think those are going to be relevant in this conversation, but if we can't have it, then this may be not worth the effort.
I think to the extent they're focused on a specific action was taken in this instance, you know, we'll make note of comments that you might have as to, you know, we're not prepared to say, well, we've developed a procedure to prevent this or make sure this occurs, that sort of thing at today's, but we'll certainly make note of your comment on a specific procedural action that occurred, and I think you know, Mr. Kellerby can tell you what did occur and maybe, you know, why they do things the way they do, but you know, we don't want to get into an overall reforming of the system in today's meeting. I think
Yeah, I think just to jump in here, we're just as interested in doing this work right as you are, Mr. King, and as you are, Mrs. Seriani. Obviously, there were some mistakes in this. I think what Patrick's really trying to say is that as they relate to what happened with you guys' case, with your case, we're definitely, we can go in and talk about those. I think Joe is not afraid to say, we've looked at this, we're trying to put these things in place to make sure that it doesn't happen again. We just don't want it to go outside of this case for issues that may or may not involve this one. So if we get
Yeah,
to-
I'm not here for any other
Okay.
particular case. I think overall,
Yeah.
just the dynamics of
And
how
if-
this was executed overall
Yeah.
is pretty disturbing, and I guess is
Yeah.
And I think
obviously
they'll
everybody
marry.
here probably would
I
agree.
think they will.
I think they'll leave
Okay.
it in and out while we do
If we
this.
get to one of those points, then let's just kind of call time out
Sure,
and say,
sure.
and then figure out, because we are just as interested in having this go right every time. It doesn't always go right every time, and so we're here for the same reasons.
Okay.
We are.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Joe, kind of right off the bat, had maybe some comments.
Sure.
Uh,
So I know one of the comments I believe you made to Ms. Calvert was that a sister was contacted, and it's not reflected in the report.
It is not in the report.
That's correct. And so I have followed up on that and have confirmed that a sister was contacted.
Yes.
And it wasn't, and I know how that happened. And so we did have a case manager that attempted to make the contact for Miss Evans. And so it was not communicated efficiently back to Miss Evans to get into the report, and so it was missed. And so that is one area that, again, to have an accurate record of our involvement with your family, certainly am going to reopen and make sure that that contact is in there on the date and time that that contact was made via the method of that contact, which I believe was by telephone.
It was.
And that it will be accurately documented what was said in there, so that.
Well, and I have her statements also on it. I mean, I had talked to her last night. She said she'd give her statement on exactly how it happened. There were several missed phone calls, but within 24 hours, she had gotten to speak to somebody about it.
Okay. So contact was initiated by our department, and then she tried to call back several times, and then finally got somebody. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And it was a different person than the caseworker who worked the case, is my understanding.
And my sister said all of her information was at work this morning. When I talked to her last night, she said she would go in through her notes at work this morning because she has the name and number of who exactly she had spoken to. So she would get that information to me.
I'm confident that that'll match
Okay.
what I've got in regards to who it
And
is.
on the other part of that, speaking of making former contacts, where it says in here that they contacted the school, they obviously went to Taylor
What
Elementary.
page number is that?
That's going to be page 6. The very top one,
Okay, on 11/17.
where it says Evans went to the school and they
Yes.
were not registered.
Yes.
Now, I have spoken to Terry Valentine, who is the secretary, who Sarah Evans had talked to,
At what school? is it?
Taylor
Okay.
Elementary. I'm not sure what all went on with Mount Garfield. I didn't have a child in Mount Garfield
Okay.
during any of this, or a child of that age, so I don't know why Mount Garfield was contacted, but, so all she wrote in here was that they are not registered, and the school staff stated that the kids are registered in Paonia. Well, Terry did give her our contact information. I know Terry personally. She did give Sarah our contact information, and she did tell her that we had lived in Paonia since February of 2015.
And just to be clear, the secretary at Taylor did identify it being Sarah Evans.
No,
Or did
she
she
just
just say
identified
case
it that it was a case manager.
I think there was in one of the Cora reports, though. I didn't bring the stack, but you may have it in there.
Oh, I don't have them all.
There's one that we received that there was whoever made that initial contact, because it had your name. I don't know if you remember that had your name and some notes scribbled on it from November 17th. So I think that, do you guys have that in front of you?
I don't.
If not, I guess I can email it to you
I
later.
can see if I can pull it up too.
Yeah, if you have that, where I
So
scan
that's
it into.
indicating that there's communication that in fact we did have.
So they knew on that date, they were in Paonia on 11/17, that they had moved to Paonia
Yes.
on that date. I don't know who it was though. You guys can figure it out with the writing on it.
This says this says case manager Evans, which, you know, I don't know if it was her or not that was there, but let me go back through and see if I can.
Did you guys see all the email threads between everybody? Have you guys seen those documents?
I have not. I haven't
Oh, you
seen all
haven't?
the email threads.
Well, maybe I should have brought all those this morning. There was several emails that we had asked for. So some with you and Lynette, some with her, Lynette, and Sarah, and the other case managers. So I think those are some of the things we wanted to speak about. If she can hopefully find the scan, we at least can bring it up on a phone and let you look at it. We can speak specifically to an email that was thrown around and why there's some of that additional concern.
Okay.
Of after she started requesting the reports and stuff, there was a lot of emails, and one in particular was to the closed report was, did you add that information we talked about this morning?
Right.
So we know something was added or subtracted from the report. We just have no idea what that was.
Sure. And I mean, it is in relation to this assessment, and so I can tell you exactly. I can only speak to Mr. King what my communication with Ms. Overmeyer was, and so Ms. Overmeyer came and spoke to me about, you know, that this was an interesting assessment because of some jurisdictional issues and different things like that. And so whenever that comes to my attention, I pull the assessment and read it. And so when I read it, I noticed a contact that was entered by Ms. Overmeyer in relation to her communication with Ms. Seriani. And in that communication, it was noted that she had spoke with a Delta County CPS supervisor. And that was, I believe, on like 12/17, roughly.
This was all after
Yeah.
the incident with my
Right.
children.
And so what I asked Ms. Overmeyer was why there wasn't a contact between her and the Delta County CPS prior to the 12/17. And she then had admitted that, that didn't get in there. And that was what I had told her needed to be in there to reflect an accurate documentation.
So the 1211 was added. Is that on page 6?
Yep,
The
that was the
1211 was the.
Yeah.
Okay, so now on this one though, I want you guys to look at this one because originally it was that Lynette had spoken to Anne via phone. Well, that never happened. Second, it comes out in this report that this has been done by email now, which it states clearly right here, email.
Right.
Well, now it is being stated that it was done on a personal cell phone.
Right.
So I'm still in the process of getting the core reports because I need to know what it states in there.
Sure.
Because the first time I spoke to Lynette on the phone, and I wish I would have recorded it, she had not spoken to Delta County at all. Ann Gallegos, who works down at Delta County DHS, said she has nothing. She has no contact from Mesa County. I now have another core request in with Delta County trying to get her personal phone records to see, you know, why.
Sure.
So why did we go from a phone call to an email and then now a personal text message?
Right.
And also, why are my kids being spoken to between different workers on their personal cell phones?
So
I mean, that's huge.
So that's kind of getting into the larger policy issue as far as personal cell phone use and work related. What I can only speak to is in regards to Miss Overmeyer thinking she communicated via one way and in fact it was another. I mean, ultimately that's what she's saying, is she thought that it was this communication, and when it was all said and done, it actually was done this way. In regards though, when we're talking about the addition of that contact, what I can speak to is that's the reason why that was added, because I saw the contact information from 12/17. That was in the original. And in this contact on 12/17, it clearly says that we asked Delta County to conduct courtesy interviews. I spoke to Ann Gallegos, who checked with their administration and declined. So
Okay.
when I originally read that, that was the source of me saying to Ms. Overmeyer, you don't have that documented. You don't have the date, and you don't have when you spoke with Ann, and that's why.
Okay, so now we have a date of 12/10 at 3:09 p.m. is when this supposed text message now went through that we still cannot get.
Right.
We're
You're
still
requesting.
trying to get it.
Right.
You know,
I understand.
Yeah, I think, well,
it's
it did come,
frustrating.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. And I don't know about you. I mean, I would think that if you're a healthy, normal, working person, if you spoke to somebody on the phone, you should know the difference between if you spoke to them on the phone or if you emailed or texted them. That to me right there is who is
Yeah, and
it?
I think the way it
What
actually
is this?
panned out, what we have so far was about 3:00 in the afternoon on the 10th or somewhere around there, a message was left on her personal cell phone down there, not her work cell phone. So it was a message left. So it wasn't I actually spoke to.
Sure.
So we're still saying in this report we spoke to somebody.
Yeah.
She didn't speak to anybody. She left a message. And the text message that came back that was supplied via quarter request was a simple. I talked to administrator. We can't do it at that particular moment in time.
Resources or something.
Well, I don't know that it said, I can't remember what the text said, I'll have to look it up again,
Well,
but,
that's what Mesa County is claiming, that Delta County didn't have the resources. But I have been in touch with Delta County attorney, and she's trying to get on their end the text messages.
Okay.
You
So
know.
that's still unknown.
She's trying,
Yeah.
she's trying. She's going through personal cell phones, trying to get the
yeah,
information.
hopefully
she
there's a
needs.
message on there of what Lynette left, that's
Right.
probably what we're after. And I
Sure.
think the phone call, cell phone number matched up when we checked
But
from
they
Lynette's
Sure.
cell phone record.
The county attorney in Delta also did tell me that Lynette and Ann were working with another family at the same time. So that these text messages and calls, there's a big possibility they don't even apply to my family at all.
That's in question, right? Is that what?
That is in question.
Okay.
So Delta County attorney is looking to see if they even apply to my family at all.
Okay.
Because she has a big question on these conversations that are going on or had gone on this day. She was under the under the understanding that it was not even my family, it was a different family.
Okay.
So, still waiting to get all of that back, but I think she's having a hard time of seeing on if it's even my family they were talking about.
Sure. Okay.
So,
And
Yeah,
it's
'cause-
absolutely. I
Yeah, and then
agree.
you can see the regardless either way, you still didn't say who authorized your Mesa County case managers to come into Delta County or, and interview kids. I don't see where that
Yeah.
approval was done.
Right, and that's not a formal approval. It's an informal approval.
Right, there's no MOU on record. We asked for that at the
Yeah,
last meeting,
yeah,
and
it's
the county attorney
it's-
said there's nothing
right.
there.
Yeah.
But the state statutes and the Rule 7s are very, very clear on jurisdiction resides where the children live.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, when it's determined.
which
Yeah.
was determined on the
it
17th.
was determined on the 17th.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's what's determined on the 17th was that's where they're going to school, and so there are issues where you've got a split home, and so you've got kids going between both homes, and
I've never had that case.
what's that?
My husband and
right.
I have been married for almost
we're not-
18
we're not-
years,
yeah.
so
I understand. Yeah, I understand that. But when we
I guess you guys could assume that, but assuming is not doing an investigation.
right, we do assume until we can get the facts, and so unfortunately sometimes we launch into what the referral source says.
I think the administrator at the school knew them very well, and I mean, the Serrani's I mean, I mentioned the names to people here in town, and they all know the family just through the.
I mean, you know my husband through coaching. My husband was Palisade baseball coach for a long time.
So everybody knows that
You know.
name out there in
So-
Palisade. So the administrators, I
Right.
think, was very clear at the very onset there. Are the kids here? No, they've moved as a family to Paonia.
And I agree, once we get the information a little more clear up front, what I'm telling you is certainly what's in here, we have experienced where there is split custody, and when there's split custody, even if kids are going to school, there are some court orders that still motion that or say that it's split, and then the jurisdictional rules are if it's split 50-50, it's where the allegations, where the alleged perpetrator lives. And that's what we were trying to just really lock down and nail down. I agree with you 100%. When kids are going to school in another district, that should be a high alert that that's probable of where the jurisdiction is. But it wasn't 100% certain at that time. Based on
How?
based on all the allegations from the referral source was just claiming.
Now, you guys do realize that the referral source has a restraining order against. I mean, we have restraining orders against the referral source for harassment.
I don't think we
At the time,
had
we didn't.
that information
So,
yet.
I mean, that right there alone, part of the reason my daughter is so traumatized by this, because obviously we know who the referral source was. All the questions that were asked were things about, you know, things that come from the referral source. You know, my question is why wasn't any research done on the referral end of it at all?
Well, we don't have to research the referral source. It's a good question. Statutorily, there's nothing in rule that says we've got to research a referral source. What we do internally is, if we get somebody that refers multiple times over and over
Right.
and over, the rule says you can call into question whether the referral source is credible or not.
Right.
Given the fact that there was zero information from a child protection standpoint on your family, we have no way to know if this referral
Well,
source
it
was
shows on
credible.
here where you had checked me, my husband, all the parties involved. We all had nothing come up on
Right.
us. Now, if you had just ran the name of the referral source, it all would have come up.
It's not a bad point, Miss Seriani.
I
I'm not
mean,
disagreeing with you.
So, I mean, that would have eliminated, I couldn't tell you guys how much, if just the referral source would have been run along with all the other adults involved, you would have been able to see a pretty clear picture.
But I'm not sure what, when you say run it, what it would have disclosed about the referral source, but even somebody with a criminal history, or other contacts with the department isn't disqualified from being a referral source.
No, I
Obviously,
get that. I
It
get
might
that.
engender
mean-
some
Go to
additional
credibility issues.
It would
Right.
go to credibility,
Research.
exactly. You know, and like in particular, we went down to Mesa County Sheriff's Department to get all of the police reports and everything that had been done. The second that he punched in each one of our names, you know, nothing came up. The second he punched in the referral source, he gets a thing that pops up that says all of this information. You know, there's restraining orders in place, everything. It didn't pop up on any of us, but it popped up immediately as he was researching his name. So, you know, I would think that that would be a pretty good indicator to you guys. Well, maybe we should call the parents or do some calling around to see if there's something going on here.
Right, and so what I can tell you, as I've sat in teams that make decisions on whether to assign or not assign, is certainly referral source credibility is a piece of the information. We also have to just look at what's said. And we are tasked with figuring out, is there enough information by our criteria to still go make sure that kids are safe? Or is a referral source's motive to do this? And it's very hard to do. We do not make it practice to contact people in an assessment to make the decision, because we have very quick time frames to turn around and make a
Well,
decision.
but the time frames weren't followed in my case.
No, I agree. I agree.
Not at
And-
all.
And we can talk about that. Right now, I'm just talking about how the decision of making a determination of if we should assign an assessment to a family or not.
Yeah, I guess I just have some questions on that. You can call in the number anonymously, correct?
Correct.
And you investigate everything?
No, sir.
We don't. We screen out roughly half of the referrals that we get every month.
Okay.
So like in the month of November, we received 331 referrals of possible abuse or neglect that range from, well, I mean, Joe can give you the details on that, but pretty much our numbers are half of those then meet their criteria, that then receive some sort of an investigation or assessment where we look into them based on the content of the referral. I know that, you know, there's been some question about, can you report a child abuse referral against anybody? And yeah, the question to that is yes. So you stated that in public hearing about the commissioners, and you could, right? You could call the hotline and report me for child abuse and neglect. I could report you for child
Absolutely.
abuse or
No,
neglect.
that's
And
why
so-
I'm sitting here.
So really, and again, Mr. King and Mrs. Seriani, trying to separate out from this the stuff that really upsets you about what happened to you, right, and your family, versus as a system, what we try to do every day, not only to make the right decisions, obviously timeliness, there are expectations of timeliness. We take those very seriously. In your situation, we missed that by a long shot in your situation.
Well, and I'd asked that in our meeting
Yeah.
with the Jill and Rose,
Yeah.
everybody was sitting down. I had asked that if there was truly something bad going on here with the time frame on this, these kids could have been dead.
I don't disagree with
You know, if it
That's
was
a
truly
very big
something
issue.
bad, these kids could have been dead. So their ball was dropped there.
I agree 100%.
It was dropped in a ton of places.
And that's why I said at the onset of this meeting, we are just as interested in you guys, because that's the sad reality of this. There are kids that get killed. Not every day in the state of Colorado, but across the nation because of child abuse and neglect. On the overall, I think we do a pretty good job of meeting the state's expectations for timeliness, which is 90%. If you're involved in that situation, is that good enough? No. But it is that. How do you average out and how
So
do you,
how did this
let
one?
me finish.
Okay.
Okay, so we do take that very, very seriously. So I'm just trying to sort through, we're definitely on the inaccurate information, either email, phone call, things like that. We're trying to get that information so that it is correctly stated in here. As far as the jurisdiction stuff, again, per your comments in public hearing, Mr. King, I just wanna clarify one thing. We do not make money whenever we get involved with the family. And I mean, you stated that several times.
I mean,
So, we don't. And I can walk you through that at a different time.
Okay,
Not gonna
yeah,
go with that, but
okay.
it absolutely costs Mesa County every time. So I don't know with the jurisdiction thing, we're still trying to sort out, because we want the answer for that.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out why all of a sudden there was
Right.
urgency to have to drive all the way down to Paonia.
I can answer that.
Yeah,
I mean, what was the
why don't
urgency
you just
there?
Yeah, I can
Because
answer that.
we're talking about timeframes.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
yeah, so there's, I mean, I have a couple questions and I
Okay.
think she would probably agree with these. The urgency there,
Yeah.
the complaint was regarding a supposed drug deal, and I guess the dad ended up filing a report with the sheriff's office on the same day that you guys received this phone call, ironically, and
But it wasn't against me or my family.
a text that was almost
So-
verbatim this exact initial paragraph by the reporter, so. But I guess, so there's two things here, let me finish that story. So here's a person, right, that's using kids on the other side of the spectrum, I think we've asked this last time, was using kids to make a report, and that was, those names were left in the report, which I think is supposed to be redacted, but I'll let you guys address that in a minute, but anyway,
We
so.
are looking into that reduction
Okay,
thing as
okay.
well.
So that to, anyway, but it was unfounded.
Yeah.
Right? We now know circumstances related to what was going on here. Unfortunately, it's a 40-year marriage that's, I think still, the system's being abused. But now you actually have,
But that
does that
part-
count as child abuse where you're using some other kids? I mean, wouldn't that throw up a red flag to investigate? I'm just asking, does it
Well-
hurt you to,
Well, what
you know?
I can tell you is I can't confirm or deny who called this in. So we can make assumptions, and you guys can think you know who it is.
I have a police
okay.
report and
I
evidence
hear-
of it,
I
so
hear- I
I
hear
know
ya.
who it is.
Okay, but we can't. So we
Legally, we
can't
I get
comment
that.
on if we think that's child abuse or not, because we can't make any comments
Right.
to confirm or deny the referral.
Okay,
But it was,
so-
but anyway, let me, so the other part to that was, it was a supposed drug deal, was the, at least in the initial complaint, that's all they were talking about, some pills being taken. But we drive all the way down to Paonia for, 30 days later, and we don't even really, I mean, in the responses here, it was everything but a drug deal that was being addressed.
So
Yeah, my kids
I
were
think
not
this would help
questioning
you.
anything about this.
if Joe walks through the sense of urgency piece, cause we can absolutely explain that. So why don't you start there, and then if you, then we can.
Do you have like 60 days to make a report on initial investigations or something in Rule
Yeah.
7 that talked about 60 days?
You got 60 days to investigate and document
And
and get it
okay.
closed to.
Before you get to that,
Sure.
I think one of the questions came up, and it might be helpful for me to know. I mean, I think what you're saying is you've got parents who have no prior history with the system, no reason to believe that you should, there would be a situation that would warrant department involvement. And you have, at least from your perspective, the reporting party, somebody who you investigated that person, you might have called into question the veracity of their report. Now, obviously, they don't know that, but Joe, and I think Tracey, you said that you weed out half of them. Are there some criteria that you follow? And in this situation, what was it about this report? Was it the specificity of the nature of the potential abuse? What do you look at and say, this one, because obviously it's kind of a gut feel, isn't it, to a certain extent?
Well, certainly, I don't believe we do it on gut feel. It looks at like how specific the information is. So if somebody were to just call in, for example, and say, kids are being abused, I hear yelling and screaming in the apartment next door, I think it's child abuse. So our rules tell us in the Children's Code in Volume 7 that it's got to be clear and specific information. So a lot of times, and it's got to be, unless we're dealing with sex abuse, it's got to be fairly present. So we've got to reasonably think, like, has this occurred in a reasonable amount of time? We got to say that if kids are exposed to certain things, is it reasonable that it can have a negative impact on them? Does it put them in dangerous situations? And we put all that together with history to make a determination of, do we think this is more than likely to have occurred or not, and we need to go figure this out. So we look at kind of how specific the information is. So when we got people that can, give us, certainly names and in, certainly like sex abuse situations, I mean, have they had a conversation with a child who clearly talks about sex abuse, can clearly identify a perpetrator, can clearly identify timeframes and things like that. That goes into the making. I can tell you our process of doing it is lengthy. It's exhaustive because we really look at every single one on a case-by-case basis.
Well, then can I ask what was done on mine then?
In regards to what was done.
When the referral came in, because I can see the referral right here.
Yes.
Okay, there's a lot of gray areas in it. A lot of gray areas in it. And you guys even say in the back of the report, in the notes, there's gray areas.
Yes.
They don't know what time this
When did the
happened.
incidents occur? That's right.
There is places named on here, but
I think the probably from their standpoint too, like here's the grandmother's name even mentioned in here as being involved, and I think that's where first taking a look at this, there was too many overlaps going on with the sheriff's department, stuff being reported there with the divorce situation going on, and another county employee potentially.
But we don't have access to that, to the other pieces of this case.
Right? Yeah. No, I understand you don't have them there,
Yeah.
but
I think
I
that's
think is it
important.
if somebody says drug deal,
Yeah.
is that all of a sudden, that's obviously gonna be a automatic red flag?
Yes, it's an automatic red flag.
Okay,
It certainly
okay.
is not an automatic assignment, so, though. So
Okay.
somebody couldn't call in and say, hey, this child was involved with a drug deal, and then boom, we're gone. Absolutely not. We look at some specificity, which goes to have the kids described this to somebody who has called in. And when you get that specific, it leads us to believe that we need to go out and see if it's true or not because of how specific this information is.
Right.
So did you guys talk to anybody else then?
Mesa County Sheriff's Office was mentioned, and so that's
Yeah.
one of the things we focused on was do you have a contact at Mesa County Sheriff's Office where you say, is there an active drug investigation?
We can ask them if they've got a
Did that
report.
happen?
It
No,
says
Okay.
it happened.
Well, we didn't pull it though. Where does it say that we pulled Mesa
On
County Sheriff?
page,
I may have
it's on
overlooked that.
it's on page 4 of 11,
Okay.
when you're going through your assessment summary, and that was an actual strength.
It says that this was reported to Mesa County Sheriff's Office, not that we did it, but.
I understand what I'm saying, right? If I was sitting on this participant panel, I think I would be asking, in this case, did we contact you obviously have an MOU with Mesa County
Yeah.
Sheriff's Office, so
Right.
that's in place. So that would have been,
Yeah.
to me, a
Well,
real simple.
what I would have loved from a best practice is what we should do is what I would have loved is that looked at and then the assessment worker would have contacted and said, can I get the report? Yes.
Right.
I mean, anytime that we say we got a Mesa County Sheriff's report, I mean.
Yeah, and the report was kind of funny, but you didn't see.
Yeah.
It was actually alleged well over a year before that.
So, so 2 things.
Yeah.
If that report's pulled early, we can use that in screening. And then 2, we could use it for if we've got to, part of the investigation to make a determination whether
So,
kids
but it
are
wasn't
safe or
it
unsafe.
wasn't pulled.
Right.
So what made it continue in my case?
The specificity of the referral. I mean, just when you look at it, what I can tell you is that's when you talk about what was reported. Again, in our opinion, when we make that decision, let me go back to it. When they're talking about, buying lots of pills, a gallon bag of it, they're going to a truck stop, there appears to be a drug deal. One of the kids is actually calling it a drug deal, that we've got a parent coming back to the car with pills. I mean, that, and again, in our opinion, appears that,
But this came from an adult, not from the children that were named in it.
well, but again, when we're making a determination on if we're gonna go out and assess if kids are safe, you can assume that did the kids tell this adult this? Did the adult learn it from a different manner, or did the kids actually say it? And so, again, gray areas, but it's something that we use to make a determination on whether we go out. We can't go out on 350 some. We can't just go out on all of them, but when they start getting specific, then it can turn the table of saying, I think we need to go. Now, the second piece of information that we have to make a determination in this meeting is how quickly. Now, I will admit to you 100%, and this will go into our timeliness here. So
Sure.
let's just start from the beginning. We use history, or lack thereof history, to make a determination of whether it meets our immediate criteria, which is present danger, which means we go right now. Most of those don't even get to this meeting, because when they call in, these are reviewed the next day. And so if somebody calls in and it's present danger, we go right now. A free day, which is a 3 calendar day, that's 72 hours of a response, saying that that's impending danger. So there's a high likelihood based on the information and possible history that children are going to be hurt at a moderate to severe level within 72 hours, and we need to get out there. Or a 5 business working day. So that's 5 days from the day that the referral came in to start making our attempts. If you go out and you try to make an attempt and they're not there, it counts for something within that 5 days, and the clock starts over from the day that you attempt. So if we go out like on the 3rd day, then we get 5 more calendar days to try to see them again. That's ultimately what was missed, and it's called reasonable efforts. So the first attempt, I believe, at the school was made appropriately. And
Yeah, and I guess just because of the nature of the call, we're talking about potential drug deals and that sort of thing. You guys would send a case manager into dealing with drug dealers potentially. So Cause I'm just looking at number 4 on your assessment summary says notify law enforcement. No, we didn't get anything that was checked in this particular thing.
Yeah,
This is an empty.
Yeah, that's how we're printing it out of Troy.
But I mean, I'm trying to follow, this is obviously a state document here that it's in their system, so this would be the way the state would probably like to see things go when you're assessing. And so notify law enforcement, I would be thinking from a law enforcement standpoint that, hey, we got a potential drug deal, would I send a case manager in with no authority, no arrestability, no nothing, just to go be a set of eyes into drug dealers? I'm just saying, to me, as a case manager, I would be looking at you guys going, I ain't going into a drug deal situation. Are you kidding me? Not without law enforcement.
Well, and our
Involved.
first, so we would gather more information, so we certainly weren't knocking on drug dealer doors initially. We'll go talk to the kids, and if the kids start to alert us that this is going on, yes, we would start contacting law enforcement. But we would make our initial.
What if these
contact with
kids
the
were homeschooled, I guess, in this situation? I mean, and you couldn't go get them out of the school.
Yeah,
So,
How does that look?
yeah, I can certainly answer that.
Yeah.
so I'm gonna try to, cause the timeliness and the jurisdiction thing, I think, let Joe finish talking about that.
Okay.
And we'll make a note.
I'm just trying to, I'm trying to keep it in context with
Yeah, I
following
appreciate that.
this is,
Yeah, so here's what happens with the timeliness, so we made our first contact, which was within statute. The reasonable efforts failed, and so with the jurisdiction, it got brought to Ms. Overmeyer's attention that our reasonable efforts had failed. And then you can see in the contacts that we ramped up our efforts to make plans to try to go and see the kids timely. And at least according to the report, we realized that these kids are in Delta County, and we then reached out to Delta to see if they do courtesy interviews for us, at which point, when it's a courtesy interview situation, because at that point, Ms. Overmeyer's is still saying, if it's a split home, even though we've got some people telling us they're up there, we still don't have anything to dispute the allegations that stuff was going on down here in Mesa County. So if we've got a split home, we potentially still could have jurisdiction of this. So when Delta said, well, they weren't able to help us out because of resources, which is understandable, because we were so untimely, a decision was made, we have got to get up there and do our initial safety assessment to determine whether or not these kids are safe or not. And that ultimately is why we said, okay, we haven't vetted out jurisdiction enough to say it's Delta's. We need to go and have some initial interviews to start initial safety assessment so that we can make a determination on whether these kids are safe or not.
okay,
And
so
that's what
I
works this summer.
appreciate that answer.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened before? Or has Delta County or any other county come into Mesa County without you being aware and pulled kids out of school? Because when I called the district, I think what was concerning for me as a parent is they have a Mesa County DHS list, but they don't necessarily have
Yeah.
anybody else's name from any adjacent county. So,
So
I think that stirred some alarm
Sure.
down there when,
Well, the
especially.
principals were very put off because there was no Delta County representative whatsoever.
Sure.
And Mesa County didn't follow their procedures that they have in place at the school. So, I mean, both principals at both schools were like, hey, wait a minute, you guys aren't even doing what our policies are within our school.
Sure.
Delta County, how they work is whenever, DHS shows up, they go through and they talk to the principal, the people who know the children, they know these kids, they have them almost as much time as parents do. None of that was done, and that is one of Delta County's vetting processes. So they were very put off because, hey, you guys didn't even follow our rule, and now I'm supposed to open up a door and let you guys go in here and talk to these kids.
Right.
So they were concerned.
Yeah.
They called us immediately and were like, we don't know what is going on. We have no idea why Delta County's not involved in this. They even called Delta County.
Sure.
Why don't we have somebody up here? Delta County's saying, we have no idea. Why is Mesa County even there? That's the only answer we've gotten from Delta County is Mesa County never asked.
Sure.
Nothing. We have nothing from Mesa County.
Right.
And still to this point, until
We
we can confirm it,
Right.
Mesa County still hasn't had approval to go in there.
Yeah, theoretically, all of that is right. Theoretically, I'm, and this is an assumption, but, Ms. Overmeyer's communication with Ms. Gallegos is, we've got an open assessment, can you help us out? They said no. The assumption is, well, then we've got to go. So was it formal, like, hey, do we have permission to come into your county? It was an assumption of, we've communicated.
But there can't be assumptions.
I don't disagree with you.
There cannot be assumptions. When you're dealing with jurisdictional lines like that, there should
Sure.
never be an
Right.
assumption.
But what I'm saying is, when I'm a supervisor and I've been in that situation where somebody were to call, and a lot of times what happens is it's from the other side of the mountain. So they reside there, but they're going to be in Mesa County, say, visiting a grandpa, and they need courtesy interviews. Sometimes we literally say, because of our workload issues, we can't do it, and we just know then that somebody's coming in to interview the kids. Now, should we have had conversations with the school? It's a good point. It's a valid point that we could have walked in there and said, here's what's going on. What is your process, because we're in another county? And it's a absolute valid point that I think would have at least calmed the waters enough to say, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're heading there. Or, what I think the can of worms that's gotten opened is, nobody who's representing the kid in that particular case. Is there something in there where the kid has to have some sort of especially at 7 years old? I mean, it has to have somebody designated. I mean, I think potentially here we had a one-on-one interview even that was set up, not recorded, not videotaped.
Yeah.
So now we've got an adult and a kid in a single room again, opening up a huge opportunity there for something to potentially be
And the questions that were
accused
asked,
against one of your own people.
the questions that were asked to my children in these interviews, number one, didn't pertain to the complaint against us, I guess. They didn't pertain to it. The only thing that they did ask that did pertain was they asked my children if they knew what drugs looked like.
Right.
My youngest child said it looked like a fortune cookie.
Right.
That's not in the report anywhere. His responses to it is nowhere in the report. They asked my daughter. My daughter was like, I have no idea.
Right.
She had no idea what they were even talking about.
Which again.
And then,
sorry.
but there's also things, my daughter was asked if her brothers touch her in any sort of manner.
Is that in the report, or is that what your daughter said?
That is what when my daughter called me crying with the principal on the phone, she was bawling her head off saying, they asked me if my brothers abused me and touched me. That was her first words to me. So that's not in this report anywhere. And I'm thinking, my daughter has no idea what any of that is.
Sure.
She's 10 years old. So now this is all put into her head by these people who weren't even monitored in a room with my child. My children didn't know what drugs were. That night, it was hell having to explain to a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old what drugs are. They didn't know. They had no idea. Now they know, and I think that is terrible that they have to know what that is now. My daughter, I had to go over her with why they were asking why her brothers touched her. And I think that's completely wrong.
Well, I will definitely follow up, because would not be normal. I mean, I can tell you that would surprise me 100% that we went in.
Well, I have to have therapy for my daughter now because of this.
Mm-hmm.
She's getting ready to go to another therapist who's going to do another assessment on her.
Mm-hmm.
There's huge issues. We went from a child who was completely independent, doing great, doing fine, that, like, I was talking to Kevin the other day in a parking lot, and she couldn't even stay in the car. She had to sit right there where she could see me at all times. I mean, it is totally just messed her world up. And I don't think it's right.
Well, I will tell you that would be completely against protocols on our sex abuse allegations. We don't get into that because that is normally a criminal issue, and we do all of our interviews for sex abuse cases at our Western Slope Center for Children, and most of them are done with law enforcement or forensically trained interviews down there. So
why would she be asked in that interview, though?
I would question.
So, because of that alone, when I got this report and started going through it, I was like, these people that were in talking to my kids, none of this is even what really happened.
Well, I'm very interested to know how she would interpret that, because that's what I'm telling you, Ms. Seriani, is that would be completely against anything that's trained to. So if they did that on their own, I would really want to know why, which is which is why we're here, because there's a few things I wanna know why. Certainly that one, that's a new issue to me, that's why I might look a little taken back, because I hadn't heard that part yet. That would be 100% against what we believe in when we interview, so I will follow up on that. The other issue the reason why I'm here is, I am certainly gonna get to the bottom of why we weren't timely, so kind of going back to the timeliness, which really led to a quick jurisdictional decision, was why, what was going on with the primary case manager for that to be neglected for that amount of time. It is extremely rare, very rare, that we would ever go that long and not make reasonable efforts.
Well, there was an email, I think, when the request was for the report to be sent in or something like that, was something to the effect
And one
of,
of-
oh shit, I
oh
thought I
shit,
did
I
that
forgot.
2 weeks ago or something like that.
That is what the email said.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, and so I can speak to a couple of timeframes. I don't know in context what that's about. Our safety and risk, even though we have 60 days to write it all up, our safety and risk assessment by statute has to be done in 30 days. Because that's the tool that really helps us determine whether or not we've got safety issues. So that tool, and so.
So what happens if you don't meet the 30 days? Do you guys get
It's-
spanked by the state for not
Yeah,
complying?
it's compliant issues, so we get audited twice a year, they pull, and so, it can be areas of administration, you can be put on corrective action plan or performance improvement plans, different things like that. So yes, it is audited too. There's lots of things that are audited too, Mr. King, it's, and again, I don't wanna get too high, but in regards to this, timeliness is audited too.
No, I understand. So is that something I can get access to?
You would have to contact the people.
Who would be the custodian of that
The
audit?
Administrative Review Division,
Of the state?
yeah.
Okay.
So Joe, talk a little bit, because I know this has been mentioned several times today, about the concern about us talking to kids
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah, so we are allowed to speak with children away from perpetrators, and there isn't any rule to say at a certain age you have to have somebody in there. It is best practice if we feel that there is a high level of anxiety when we start initiating interviews with kids. A lot of times we will ask them, do you want like your counselor or a principal to come in? Some of them want them, some of them don't want them. But certainly the rules allow us to speak with kids.
Yeah, is there a place that
without-
states in their reporting that they offered that? Because I was just reading through Rule 7, especially if it's, and I would just urge you guys from just focusing in on this. Rule 7 was very clear on videotaping and audio recording.
That we can. As
I'm
long-
thinking you
yeah.
should.
Well,
I
right,
mean,
but
because
the rule doesn't mandate that you have to. The rule allows for you to do that as long as you don't feel that it would be traumatizing to the kid.
I'm just that if I'm coming here to urge anything for reform, is I would highly look into that. If it looked like one of the girls in this case had an iPad right there, she could have easily recorded it on the iPad and then wrote the report later, because I think it was something they wrote later anyway, so they didn't take any field notes per se, unless she typed all that while she was in there doing the interview and just making
which is
notes.
normally what they do.
Okay.
Yeah, is they do use the devices to go ahead and type right there and take the field notes.
Yeah, it would just be nice to, know what you're going in and asking
Dictating,
kids, and and if they are more interrogative type of questions, or they truly are interview type questions.
I gotta go to a meeting in about 10 minutes, so.
Okay.
I need to-
So we've talked about the accuracy of the information in the report, and we obviously know that there are points in here that need to be clarified, corrected, whatever, some of those we're waiting on information. We've got the jurisdiction issue, Joe explained why we did that, the way we did that. There are some things that I think are we waiting on information, or is that, did you answer your guys' question?
Who, I guess ultimately, I don't know, who made the approval to go down there? Who's
Yeah,
ultimately
a
responsible?
supervisor can make.
So who,
Yeah.
so Lynette,
Yeah.
it was all on Lynette to make that decision.
Yeah, supervisor can make the decision on jurisdiction and whether or
So
not.
what if it was in California and you had 30 days and the kids were in California?
And that's a great question, and there are times when we ask California to do interviews, or Texas or Missouri, and we're posed with the
And
decision.
if they don't, then do you fly out to?
We have,
You have.
yeah, we've flown where we've got jurisdiction of kids and they have absconded and we've had to go to other states and remove kids from homes and bring them back here.
But do you take a person from that jurisdiction with you?
Good point. At times we have and requested, and sometimes they decline, and sometimes they've come with us.
Oof.
That's, to me, that's not right, because number one, each area has its own laws and its own protocols. And if you reside within that area, which I'm a Delta County citizen,
Right.
the protocols were not followed, and those are the laws that govern me
Right.
and my family.
Well, the law is the state statute, so
Right.
it's the same everywhere.
Right, but okay, so the protocols, the
Protocols,
things that
yeah.
happen, you know, it still should have been followed by Delta County standards.
I agree.
You know, you go into a different area, that should happen. You should also have a representative from that area there with you also.
If they're willing. From a timeliness issue, and granted, this was blown, and we were trying to get up there. So, I mean, in theory, if we ask for representation and they say we can't give you somebody for 2 weeks, we've got to still go. We've still got to make.
Yeah, no, I know, but the call happened on the 10th.
After we realized that it dropped through the cracks.
Right,
We're-
and
we're
then you
not-
still didn't go down there till the following week on that Monday, so it still wasn't
I guess
completely urgent.
From what I'm hearing is, you basically said, hey, we kind of blew it timing wise. If we allow Delta County to be able to staff this, it might be another 2 weeks, which even exasperates the problem.
Yeah, so what I want you guys to hear is, I do not disagree with your guys' concern on timeliness. I am 100% on board and am going to figure out from a systemic point of view how we can go that amount of time without making responses to kids who we have allegations of abuse and neglect. I'm 100% going to figure that out and figure out if it was a workload issue, if it was a personal worker issue, if it was whatever, so that it doesn't happen again. That's going to be my job, is to vet these things out. so
Right,
that
and
things-
yeah, and I
so
would
that things
just,
won't
based on
improve.
the emails, and maybe you need to get those, and I can pull those out. You may need to see the emails between your case managers a little bit there, because it was a simple, and, you know, just sort of.
The most
the text message, yeah,
unprofessional thing
very
I've seen.
It's just, you know,
We're
and these
addressing
are,
that as well.
and we're looking at that, and we got you know, these guys going down and interviewing kids alone. I mean, can you see the public perception of that? At least in mine is, I would be embarrassed
Yeah,
by the actions that were taken. But here's the thing: is if it's a time load thing, how can you just suddenly go, hey, you know, we need to go down on Monday to Paonia. You know, can you go?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah, let me get out of this
Well,
county. You
and I'm
know,
not
I
saying-
mean, it was just
and I'm not
it was
saying it was
sort
a
of.
workload. Yeah, I'm not saying it was a workload issue. I'm saying I've got to dig into
And
it to see.
my other thing is if you're saying that you're not making money off of these kids doing this, okay, Mesa County's footing the bill for you guys to go down there. Mesa County residents are footing the bill for you guys to go down there, right?
20%. The other
We paid
80s.
the cost of that, yes.
You
we
paid
did.
the cost for that.
We did.
You know, that's not fair to your people in Mesa County at all either, you know, because this entire thing was bogus. So, you know, and I've gone through this,
And that's what we stated.
to go back to the reporter or go back to somebody to be held accountable for what's going on and what's happening here. You know, obviously I think there needs to be accountability for how this was done, period.
We agree with that.
I mean,
But I think, be clear, there are instances of those 50% of the 350 reports you get every month. How many of the ones you actually investigate turn out to be unfounded?
There's a decent amount.
About
So-
half of
yeah.
those.
So,
there's a decent
I mean,
amount.
you could
Half
call
of
it
the
a
half.
waste of resources. Here, there was probably a few extra resources because they
so
had to go
is
down
there
to Paonia. But
any way that you guys can, I mean, you've got to some way kind of try to stop some of the unfounded reporting. Because obviously it's just a system being used by vindictive people.
There's a percentage.
And there should be some sort of repercussions to these
Right.
people because you're wasting how much time and money
And
to
that's
do
what
this.
that's what I would say is, obviously, I mean, even through, you know, you guys' own account here today, there's other stuff you guys are dealing with that has nothing to do with us.
Right.
And that part of it, trying to get kind of justice against those who inaccurately report. When we went down and we looked and we talked to your kiddos, it was very clear that there was no child abuse or safety issues with this case, and that's why we closed it out. And we are not stepping away from the mistakes, the timeliness, the professionalism, everything. When this actually crossed our desks and we looked at it, we came up with the same concerns that you guys have. We're looking at some of our internal policies, like Joe said, we are charged with the responsibility we have. We don't have the luxury of knowing all the details on the other side. And if we miss or screw this up, right, and a kid dies, as you insinuated earlier, holy crap, right?
Or if you don't respond,
right,
because it
And we
was
get
a
it.
borderline, well, that could be a bogus
Okay, so-
report.
But-
You don't
but
respond and a
finish.
kid dies, I can tell you, instead of the two of you sitting there, there are
But-
3 lawyers sitting in here and
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So
a
let me-
wrongful
let me
death
finish-
lawsuit,
Yeah,
so.
let me finish my point though. So I can appreciate, given kind of what I think you guys are dealing with, and this is all from your own post, Mr. King, the mess that everything's going on around this. We are not trying to harass you or add anything to that. We closed this thing out and said it's unfounded, which to us is very clear. There is not child abuse or neglect going on by your parenting or anything else with these kiddos. Did we jack some stuff up in here? Absolutely. Are we working to make sure that doesn't happen? Yes, we are. But the system, the way it's built, and as Pat said, the state and federal rules that govern this, we can't and won't go after somebody because they falsely allege child abuse or neglect. And that's the part we can't help you guys with. What we're sitting here, we're owning our mistakes.
Yeah, we're just hoping that,
Right.
in that comment, that another county employee wasn't,
Because there is suspicion that there is another county employee who helped urge this
That
entire
no-
thing.
Shop?
well, that's what we're trying to determine that still. If somebody, not within, from another department,
Oh,
Okay.
maybe have a relationship, sorry, no, outside your department, no, from another
That
department.
encouraged the investigation.
Okay.
And that's what we were trying to figure out, the urgent, all of a sudden there was this urgency.
yeah, our urgency came from we dropped the
We-
frickin' ball.
we
missed
There
it.
might
We
be
missed
kids
response
out there that are unsafe.
Yeah,
I
that's,
mean, that's where that came
So
from.
there was no other county employee on the outside, like not in this
that
department,
drove this for
that-
us.
pushed it.
I can tell you
From us.
without a doubt, without a shred of information that ever came to my knowledge, that there was any outsider that helped push this through. We made our decisions based on our screening criteria, and we made the quick decision to get up into Delta based on we failed to meet our reasonable efforts.
Well, you can see where the suspicion would come from when we were getting private text messages on private cell phones, potentially
Yeah.
manipulating,
And
and
that, I
you
hear
know.
you.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
we were talking with.
We already had a meeting on cell phone.
I hear you, but I need you guys to hear that we do not operate with just somebody from the outside saying, hey, you need to go get this family. We investigate abuse and neglect from any part of the families that may come into our purview. It could be a commissioner, it could be the chief of police, it could be whatever. Now, can we conflict out? Absolutely. If we don't want the presence of something done by a conflict of interest, we can ask for help on that. But what I'm saying is, we believe in the act of keeping kids protected and safe and helping families build safe environments. So we don't allow that type of influence. And in this situation, I believe 100% that had nothing to do with any of our sense of urgency to go into Delta County.
So just going back to the timing, so let's say, you have this consistent problem here with timeliness.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a consistent problem.
No.
Well, I'm just saying if it is, and
Yeah.
you fall under a compliance
Right,
mandate or whatever, there's money involved in that. You lose money. or do they come in? It's sort of like the schools receive federal dollars, right?
Oh.
When they don't meet the compliances at a certain school, they can come in and now
Fiscally sanctioned,
and correct and
yeah.
direct the monies, because right now they can spend it wherever.
no, I'm just saying, is that what you're talking about as fiscal
So no,
sanctions?
so the allocation process for the funding that we get for child welfare happens through a completely different method. What can happen is if we have a problem that, like you said, if it's a consistent issue, really, I don't even know how many different points we're audited in child welfare as well as the rest of our stuff. If they come in and they say, okay, it is very clear that not only have we brought to your attention that your timeliness, your response time is not adequate, and you have failed to do anything to address it, basically what that then, because Patrick mentioned the Board of Human Services or the commissioners, the state of Colorado, Department of Human Services will bring that likely to both Patrick's attention as well as the board's. This has never happened, so they will sit down and say, all right, Garcher, your staff, these items, what are you gonna do about it? And if I felt likely I will lose my job because of that.
Well, I mean, and this is not directly related to this, but we were $1.5 million over budget in child welfare this
No, we
this
weren't,
last
we
fiscal
were
year.
actually within 20, and this is something else that
Okay.
got wrong on VetTheGov. We were within $28,000 of our budget. That was $1.4 million under the amount allocated to us from the state of Colorado.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the monthly calls, and I'll be done
Yeah.
because I gotta get going too. That seems to be pretty flatlined over several years. It's not been like an increase or decrease, so.
Well, they're definitely
Yeah.
increasing.
But how many of that, so I just would go back to the 75 potentially of calls a month that are actually a finding of some sort. How many are repeats? Like same family again from a year prior? Or do you
Well, I
have
don't
that?
have- I
Would
don't
that be
have
in the audit data?
No.
That wouldn't
No,
be in there.
not that I'm aware of. The audit tool, that I'm thinking that we get screened to, doesn't. Now, the ARD, the division may be able to provide repeats. I know anecdotally, we absolutely get repeat families.
Right.
And that's taken in consideration. History, ultimately, Mr.
Right.
King is what we're talking
Right.
about, so.
Yeah, there's the trail system or
Yeah,
whatever that
and
would
so,
track that,
so
right?
we certainly look at history, so, but yeah, as far as the calls, if we look way back when, we did see a spike and might be leveling off because of, our training to mandatory reporters, and the community has certainly increased, over the number of years, which is why we think our call volume got to where it's at and then stabilized, because we do a pretty good job staying engaged with our mandatory reporters. So that's why
Okay.
we think our call volume is where it's at.
So just one more item from me, because, I mean, I kind of feel like a big part of what's driving you guys in this is, I mean, aside from the mistakes, is try to see if we're trying to work with somebody else within Mesa County to push and I don't know, I guess add to the other issues you guys are dealing with. Sounds like you guys have got lots of core requests out there. Tell you.
We would ask you to at least maybe internally look at that
Yeah.
too,
Well,
when you're looking at all the other stuff.
So Patrick, and I think you guys are probably involved if there's core requests out
Yeah.
there. You know, I want to know if that has happened between my staff and any other staff. We do not have the time or the interest to try to get in the middle of something like that. I'm sorry you and your family are going through that. Again, from what I read that's been posted out there. But one thing I want to touch base on, and that was, you know, there's been allegations of myself and the Delta County director trying to cover something up. If you look back through the emails that you cored, and this happened in January, that whole string came from, you know, it didn't come from me. It came from, you know, 2 months later at a director level saying, hey, do you know about the Seriani case? Heads up, whatever the Delta director. I don't. I mean, and this is not to try to minimize what needs to be done in our system to correct these kinds of mistakes and inaccuracies.
Well, it's because I went to Delta County.
No, but listen, these kind of things never hit my radar. I mean, the case from our side, you know, we went through, it got unfounded, moved on, right? And I
You
mean,
didn't even know about
I
the
had
case.
no idea,
From start to finish,
right?
yeah.
And so, just trying to add to that, if you guys are looking to see if we're colluding or trying to cover up, we're not. I got an email that was forwarded around from commissioners to me, from another director saying, do you know what's going on with this? And I'm like, I'm just as surprised as you are. I think my email said, yeah, as am I, give me a call.
Well,
I
I
don't
think
even know what
the
this
main
is.
reason why is
Yeah.
because even to today, we still do not have the communication between Delta County and Mesa County.
Right.
Yeah, and she
Right.
had, just to go back to, she's had 2 or 3 face-to-face with Ann Gallegos.
Who is still saying,
She had
Never
no
happened.
idea her family name, nothing was specific about,
that she did
That
work
she
with
was-
Lynette Overmeyer with another family, but it was not my family in concern. And that is also the same thing I'm getting from the county attorney in Delta. She's still trying to find text messages,
Okay.
which have yet to be found.
Okay.
She hasn't found them.
And I know everybody, I know we gotta go.
Yeah.
I am truly invested in trying to make sure that our processes are efficient, that it's professional, that it's done with consistency and with appropriate collaboration. I'm sorry that this is the product that has come out in working with your family, Ms. Seriani, but my job from here moving forward is I want to get an accurate assessment on record. That may mean reopening it again in order to put like the sister's contact in there, and to, when we verify what kind of contact was had, to make sure that that is accurate. More importantly for me though is to make sure that this product is not seen like this again, from my level, is to make sure that, you know, that we are following policy and procedure, not just in the X's and O's, but with professionalism, with due diligence, and with respect. And ultimately, because the end goal is to keep kids safe. I mean, that's why I get up every morning, is to make sure that when something comes across our desk and it's concerning, if it meets criteria, we're gonna do what we can do in a professional and respectful manner to get to the bottom of if kids are protected and safe. And that's what my mission is, and I will use this to bolster and strengthen our processes so we can
Now,
do that better.
Because of the fact that I have had such, you wouldn't even believe with my daughter because of the trauma that's been done to her. Are those issues going to be addressed with how she was questioned, the questions that had happened?
Absolutely.
I mean, you
We're gonna
can
look into
ask
that.
her and she will tell you
Oh.
exactly what was said.
Absolutely. I'm not really interested in re-interviewing your daughter. I doubt
I
you guys.
mean, no,
I doubt
not
you
at
guys
all.
are either.
But I mean,
But yes.
I mean, they were completely out of line.
So yeah, absolutely. I'm really going to fine tooth comb and sit down individually, and then with supervisor, and sit down with supervisor and go over all of it. Bring up your concerns, get to their point of view, talk about the timeliness, what was going on internally to where we missed timeliness, not just, hey, you missed it, so we're gonna go to X, Y, and Z. My job is to figure out why, so that we can prevent. If it was something that's going on, what can I build within my supervisory staff to catch something that would lead to us being untimely? That's ultimately where I'm moving forward.
do you
with
need
all
those
this.
emails?
We'll get them. I mean,
Okay,
if it was
yeah, I
for
think
it,
they've
can-
been,
Yeah.
yeah, so
I can
you guys have them all there.
So,
And I
yes.
can tell you that it's not just these two gentlemen giving you lip service. I've already been in meetings with them and their senior staff where they're addressing some of these issues, the professionalism comment, I know exactly what you're talking about, and they're on top of it. It's,
You're the attorney, right?
Yeah.
County attorney, okay, so.
yeah, so they you know, your voice is being heard, not just in today's context, but they're looking at it and taking affirmative steps to be sure that you know, they address some of those issues because they recognize where there are deficiencies.
Like I said at the get-go, we want the same thing. We want a system that is accurate, that is timely, that comes to that decision, like Joe said, of our kids safe or not, the quickest, best way we can. And as hard as it is, I mean, Joe has dedicated his life to this work. I don't have a background in case management or anything like that. But I damn sure I'm not gonna sit here and lead an organization that doesn't care or doesn't address this. So as hard as it is for both of us to sit here and see this type of work, it's necessary for us to continue to move forward. And, yeah, so.
Yeah, I
like
think
Patrick
ultimately,
said,
it's, we don't need more kids running around receiving therapy from you guys intervening, you know?
And you guys both also need to hear, we understand that can be a byproduct, and that's why we work really hard on appropriate ways to engage kids at their developmental level. And I haven't made a determination yet if we fail to do that, I do want the chance to talk to
Yeah,
the workers.
like I said, I think one way to determine that is to break that down is,
Well, it's
is
absolute-
video or audio tape,
it's- yeah,
everything,
and
and
I
then
hear ya.
it's CY8 across the board.
Sure.
So when the attorneys come in,
Yeah, but
you have it. You don't have a report full of holes where everything's a question mark
Sure.
now, because it's still in my mind is a huge question mark.
Right.
Because
And
It
I
was
can
so
tell you,
sloppy.
on all 3 of my kids' assessments, all 3 of them had discrepancies in all of them. Even my 7-year-old was like, no, that didn't happen
Yeah.
like that.
sure.
You know,
so if it's that easy to manipulate and change the narrative, you see the concern. I mean,
Or how skilled they are.
I can stretch it.
in
I can
observation.
stretch it however I
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah. No, I hear you loud and clear.
Yep.
Right.
I hear you loud and clear.
Right.
We've got some workers that are fantastic in observing and conducting those interviews and documenting it, I mean, very, very accurately, and there's a different skill set amongst the staff that we always strive to get consistent with it. And I hear you, what you're saying is that can be done very easily with audio.